We spend a lot of time on this channel talking about, I would say, two broad topics. One is freedom, and the other is security. And there's, of course, a famous expression, which is those who would give up give up freedom for safety deserve neither. This being said, I do think that there is one thing that can give us both. And this topic was kind of spurred a little bit by a conversation with a close friend and client who asked me the other day, what were the ways that I had created optionality in my life that had enhanced my life in a fantastic way. And so today I'm going to discuss a little bit about, I guess, 8 ways that we can enhance our freedom and our security simultaneously. So let's dive in. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. If you like the video, please share it with your friends. If you'd like help with relocating abroad, getting residencies, citizenship by investment, residency by investment, paying the lowest legal amount of tax possible, doing international tax optimization, etc., please reach out to me. You can book a call at calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. Or send a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. Okay, so I'm going to prelude this a little bit talking about this idea of optionality. Okay, so what is optionality all about? Optionality is the idea that you can choose to take something or not. All right. So if you just think about in finances, the idea of having an option is, you have the right but not the obligation to take advantage of it. So for example, I may buy a call option on something, and let's just say it was Tesla stock, and I have the right but not the obligation to buy it at a price of, let's just say, $800 anytime in the next 3 years, right? That would be an example of an option, okay? So in life, there are different things that we can do to set ourselves up with options. And the whole idea behind optionality is that the future is uncertain. And so if we diversify our options, then no matter which way the world goes, we can pull on one that works well for us. Now, of course, you want to have ones that don't cost you too much, because if it ends up costing a lot, then the price of the option may exceed the value of the option, especially if you have to have multiple options that you don't use. So with that in mind, we're going to go through and we're going to discuss a little bit about how there are what you might call concave options, convex options, and kind of even options. And what this means is that some options can have virtually unlimited payoff, some the payoff really drops off, and some are just kind of break even. And so I'm going to cover a bunch as they apply to us across the board here, and we'll see what it is that you think. Now, in addition to that, in this conversation with a friend, he gave a really interesting and insightful, useful way of looking at the topic. And this was to focus a lot on things by the negative as opposed to by the positive. Negativa, in other words, removing negatives as a way to get ahead as opposed to simply pursuing positives. So in other words, we're normally additive in our lives. Let's do more. And then there's the idea of, well, you can just remove bad things. So I'll cover a few of those at the end, just for a little bit different area to look at. But I think it's worth considering a lot of them. A few of them will be additive in general, but a lot of them just from the standpoint of, okay, by simply removing the negative, I can put myself in a pretty good position. So let's dive in. Now, the first one is, of course, sort of biased in the sense that you're watching Offshore Citizen, and, I talk a lot about this subject. But one of the things that has definitely been useful for me in my life has been having multiple bank accounts in multiple countries. So, typically bank accounts in 5 or so countries. And, that puts me in a position where if there's anything that goes wrong in any one of those places, I'm covered. It really doesn't cost you anything extra or a pittance extra. So I always say it's, virtually a free option that you can have. And this is a good example of a concave option, not a convex option. In other words, you're not going to get a moonshot, you're not going to get a tremendous return from this, but what it will do is it will put you in a position where you don't suffer a negative, so you can prevent a negative by having it. Okay, so that's one example of something that you can get. The next thing goes along with it is having multiple residencies. So definitely for me, having residencies in multiple countries gives a variety of different options. Now this is more on the upside because you're in a situation where if things happen to, like, each of these give you opportunities that might pay off. So it both protects you from the downside and it gives you potential upside, which is great because you're going to know different people, you're going to be exposed to different geographic opportunities, there's kind of geographic arbitrage that can take place there. And so having residencies in multiple countries, it just enhances your freedom and makes your life safer and gives you more opportunity. So I think that's great. Similar to it is the idea of having multiple citizenships. Multiple citizenships is, maybe a little bit less necessary for some people, but that being said, could open up a lot of doors. Now, here I'm going to mention a little bit about the o negativa side of things, which is that you may be in a situation where simply removing yourself from a bad environment can give you a pretty positive payoff. So here you don't necessarily need to stack a lot of benefits one on top of the other if you're simply removing yourself from maybe a dangerous environment, right? So you're decreasing the probability of something bad happening and you're increasing the probability of something good happening. And as a result, we should probably think to ourselves, based on the future that I want to have, what are the best places that I could go where it's going to maximize my exposure to the environment that would further that direction. If I want to get healthy, there's probably a certain type of place that I would maybe want to go, a certain group of people I would want to be around. If I want to make a lot of money, there's certain environments that's better to make or easier to make money. If I want to raise capital, if I want to be exposed to a certain industry, et cetera, right? Okay, so now let's go on to some that are maybe a little bit less focused on kind of what we do here, but I still think massively useful. So for me, for, maybe around 10 years or so, I've been in a situation where I've had multiple streams of income. And this has served me quite well, I think both in terms of protecting from downside and providing upside. The reason is, I look at friends of mine, I came from a part of the world where there's a big oil industry, and when oil industry did well, they did well. When the oil industry did poorly, they did poorly. I've been in a position for quite a while where, one thing doesn't have to do well because, there's 4 or 5 others that are in a position that they can counterbalance it. Now, there's probably a little bit of a trade-off there because you're in a situation where if you split your focus, you're certainly not going to do as well in any of those things. But for me, I would rather have that. I think it's a more interesting life, and I'm in a situation where the downside is certainly mitigated because I can withstand a lot of turbulence and change in the market and still be fine. The other thing is, you never know which of those is going to pay off. And so you're going down this path and you might think, hey, it's just something, static maintenance, and then you find a good opportunity and that has an opportunity to pick up. So whereas in a normal situation, you only have one option and that one option might or might not pay off, here you've got a bunch. So I encourage people to have multiple streams of income, okay? Next, I think, is health. So people probably don't really think about health as a form of an optionality, but I think it's a huge deal. So just in general, I've been pretty blessed to be a healthy person, live in, just good genes, whatever. And I think that's really, really wonderful. Now, something that you have to constantly work on. And again, it's one of these things that doesn't have a moonshot capability. So you want to figure out how do you minimize your input into getting to that health objective, because you're just going to kind of maintain it. But if you don't have energy, if you don't have vitality, if you've had, I had a few years ago, back injury, and everything that's important, minus maybe relationships, just goes to hell when you're suddenly in massive pain and can't stand up and all this stuff, right? So definitely health, big, big, big thing. I don't think we can underestimate how important it is to take care of our health and maintain it. On the other hand, the one thing that is probably more important than it is our next point to discuss. I think we're on number 5 or 6, something like that, and that is relationships. Okay, quality relationships are just so infinitely more valuable than probably anything else. And so cultivating a diverse circle, cultivating relationships around the world, but also quality relationships, right? People who you know really well, who care deeply about you, you care deeply about them. That social circle is so fantastic in terms of bringing opportunities and creating success, as well as being in a situation where it protects you from downside. If things go bad, there's really nothing, there's no substitute for having people who are close to you. And so I think one of the things you can often think a lot about, we talked a little bit earlier about, picking the places that are going to give you the most optionality. Well, the opposite is also true, or not the opposite, but in this case, it's also true, which is having a group of people who, based on where we want to go, I'm surrounding myself with that group of people. And again, the O negativa thing comes out there. Sometimes I don't have to, add more relationships. I just have to remove some bad relationships, right? So that's a really, really big thing. The next one, I think we're on 7 now, is time. So this is one that I have been worse at lately. I've got lots and lots of commitments, but certainly it's one of the things that I cherish and I've had for a pretty good period of my life. And this is time freedom, the flexibility to do what, to be flexible and, having some spare slack in your schedule to engage in things that are valuable. That, I think, is something highly underrated by most people, right? The ability to be in a situation where a lot of good opportunities might come up and you just can't take advantage of that opportunity because you don't have the time. So setting yourself up, setting your life up so that you have free time, I think immeasurably increases your optionality in a way that's really, really wonderful. I think you still want to have purpose, you still want to have things going on in your life. The idea is not to do nothing, but being able to have that flexibility, very, very valuable. And the last thing that I'll mention, number 8, is cash on hand. Now, I talk to some people who will want to have all their money invested or something. And certainly, you're going to vary how much you have around, but your ability to take advantage of good opportunities when they come up is often predicated on having resources available at the time. This is one of the things I remember Mark Cuban talking about quite a bit, was, practice smart shopping and then stack cash so that when the good opportunities come along, you have money to deploy. And a lot of people don't, right? A lot of people are tying themselves up. And I think there's a lot of value to putting yourself in a position where you have a lot of liquidity. And if there's a great opportunity, you can take advantage of it, you can move on it, and that's going to have a really big payoff. So we'd love to hear from you guys what you think. Put them in the comments below of the ways that you have kind of simultaneously enhanced freedom and security, as well as increased your optionality in life. And yeah, let me know what you think. I will see you guys in the next video.